Um, okay, Virgo, let's get started. Nobody warned you. That is the thing about the kind of shock I am feeling approaching your life right now. It does not send advance notice, does not telegraph itself through the ordinary channels of cause and effect that the rational mind monitors and prepares for. It arrives the way lightning arrives, not as the culmination of something you were watching build, but as the sudden, total, sky-splitting fact of itself. One moment the air is simply air. The next moment everything is illuminated in a light so complete and so instantaneous that the world looks, for a few breathless seconds, like something you have never seen before. You are about to see something you have never seen before. I want to be precise about the nature of what I am feeling, because shock is a word that carries darkness. By default, the mind hears it and reaches immediately for the worst category of meaning. And I need you to hear me when I say that what is gathering in the atmosphere of your life right now is not that kind. It is not the shock of loss, not the shock of devastation, not the kind that leaves wreckage behind it. It is the other kind, the rarer kind. The kind that the body responds to with the same physical jolt as its darker cousin, the sharp intake of breath, the sudden stillness, the feeling of the ground briefly liquefying beneath your feet, but whose source is something that, once the initial wave passes, reveals itself to be not catastrophe but miracle. Not the end of something, but the beginning of something so much larger than what you were living inside of, that the contrast alone is enough to make you shake. In the old symbolic grammar of the soul's journey, there is an image that governs exactly this kind of moment. Not the tower, which is the shock of collapse, not the wheel, which is the shock of reversal. Something older and stranger and more specific than either the image of the fool stepping off the cliff and discovering, in the space where falling was supposed to begin, that the ground is there, that it was always there, that the step they were most afraid of was the one that led not to the drop they had been bracing against for years, but to the solid, sunlit, completely unexpected terrain that had been waiting just beyond the edge of everything they thought they knew. You have been standing at an edge, perhaps for longer than you have been consciously aware of standing there. The particular edge of a life that has felt not wrong exactly, but constrained, contained within dimensions that never quite matched the actual size of what lives inside you. And you have been managing that containment with the practiced skill of someone who has made their peace with it, who has found the small freedoms available within the boundaries and called them enough, who has learned to want at the level the current circumstances can accommodate rather than at the level the soul actually demands. Something is about to break that containment open from the outside with a force and a specificity that you could not have manufactured from the inside, because the inside had adjusted too fully to the current dimensions to be able to imagine on its own what lay beyond them. This is how the most significant life changes tend to arrive, not as the result of internal decision alone, but as the collision between internal readiness and external catalyst. The readiness was yours, has been yours, building quietly through everything the recent seasons have asked of you. The catalyst is approaching from outside, and the collision between them, when it comes, may produce something that looks, from a certain angle, exactly like the shock of your life. For some of you, what is coming carries a quality of sudden recognition, a moment where something that has been obscured about a person, about a situation, about your own life, and the hidden possibilities within it becomes visible all at once, with a clarity that retroactively reorganizes everything you thought you understood. The information was always there. The truth was always present somewhere in the landscape. But the angle of the light, the timing, the particular configuration of circumstances that had to align before the thing could be seen was not yet in place. It is coming into place. And when the obscured thing becomes visible, the shock of it will not be the shock of something terrible being revealed. It will be the shock of something wonderful having been there all along without your knowing. For others, the shock arrives in the form of an event, something concrete, something that changes the practical landscape of your life in a way that the days immediately preceding it gave no indication of preparing an offer, a call. A decision made somewhere outside your visibility that lands in your life as a sudden and total alteration of what is possible. These events, the ones that seem to come from nowhere, are never actually from nowhere. They are the visible surface of invisible currents that have been moving for months, sometimes longer, in directions you were not positioned to observe. By the time they reach you, they are fully formed, fully real, carrying the full force of everything that built them in the unseen world. And their arrival, however sudden it appears, is simply the moment the current broke the surface. I also feel, in the layers of this reading, something specifically relational. A person or the energy of a connection that may factor into what is coming in a way that exceeds anything the current surface of that connection would suggest is possible. There are relationships that exist for years at a certain temperature, a certain depth, a certain established and seemingly permanent register of what they are and what they can be, and then something shifts. Some threshold is crossed, some moment occurs that neither party planned or anticipated, and suddenly the relationship is operating at an entirely different level. A level that was, in retrospect, always available, always latent in the dynamic, always present as potential, but that required a specific and unscheduled moment to activate. That moment may be approaching in something you are already part of. A connection that has been living at its established temperature and is about to find out it is capable of running considerably hotter or considerably deeper or considerably more honestly than it has been allowed to run. The shock of that will not be the shock of something foreign entering your life. It will be the shock of something familiar suddenly revealing a dimension that recontextualizes everything that came before it. The shock of recognition, of realizing that what you thought you knew only partially, and that the part you did not know changes the picture entirely. Let me speak now to what the shock will ask of you, because significant moments always ask something. They do not simply happen to passive recipients. They arrive and they create a requirement. A response is needed, a choice, a step, an act of courage that the moment before the shock did not contain, and that the moment after it makes unavoidable. And the nature of what this particular shock will ask, based on what I am reading in your energy, is the willingness to revise, to take the understanding you arrived at this moment carrying and be genuinely willing to hold it differently in light of what the shock reveals. Revision is harder than it sounds. We are deeply invested in our current understanding of things, in the map we have drawn of our own life, the people in it, the possibilities available to us, the ceiling of what we are allowed to expect. That map represents enormous effort, enormous experience, the distilled wisdom of everything we have been through and everything we have learned from going through it. To revise it, to say the map was missing something, to redraw the boundaries of what is possible, feels initially less like liberation and more like disorientation. Like the floor plan of the house you have lived in for years suddenly revealing a room you did not know was there. Walk into the room. However disorienting it is to discover it, however destabilizing to the sense of certainty you had constructed around what your life contains, walk into it. Because the rooms we do not know about are almost always the most significant ones, the ones that hold what the known rooms could not accommodate, the ones that exist at the edges of our current understanding precisely because what is in them exceeds the dimensions of the version of ourselves that built the map in the first place. You are bigger than your current map. That is perhaps the central truth of this reading, the thing I keep returning to from different angles because I think it is the thing most worth saying. The life you have been living with its established dimensions, its familiar contours, its carefully managed relationship between what you want and what you allow yourself to reach for is not the full size of what is available to you. It is the size that was available to a version of you that existed before certain things happened, before certain growth occurred, before the seasons you have been through did what they did to the substance and the depth and the genuine resilience of who you are. And the shock that is approaching may be the world's way of showing you concretely, undeniably, in the language of actual events rather than abstract potential, just how much larger the available size has become. Let it show you. Do not brace against it. Do not reach for the familiar framework in the first moment of the shock and try to organize what is happening into something that fits the current map. Let the map be redrawn. Let the boundaries move. Let the ceiling rise. Let yourself be genuinely, completely, productively shocked by the discovery that your life is larger than you knew, that the territory extends considerably beyond what the map suggested, and that everything you built inside the smaller version was not wasted, but was preparation, the foundation, the thing that makes it possible to inhabit something bigger without it collapsing under you. Something real is coming, something that carries with it the specific, undeniable, life-altering quality of an event that divides time into before and after. You will know it when it arrives, not because it announces itself with obvious drama, but because something in you will recognize it with a certainty that bypasses the analytical mind entirely. A bone-level knowing that this is the thing, this is the moment, this is the shock that rearranges what was and opens into what will be. Be awake for it. Be present for it. Be the version of yourself that has done enough work, survived enough difficulty, accumulated enough genuine self-knowledge to meet something significant without flinching. Because you have earned that version of yourself through everything the recent seasons demanded. And what is coming deserves to be met by someone who knows their own weight, who can stand in the middle of a life-altering moment without being swept away by it, who can receive the shock and the gift of it simultaneously, who can say, yes, I did not see this coming, and yes, I am ready for it anyway. The shock of your life is not something happening to you. It is something happening for you, arriving exactly when the internal architecture is finally solid enough to hold it, arriving in the specific form that only makes sense to someone who has lived what you have lived and become what you have become as a result of living it. Arriving in the end as the answer to a question you may have stopped asking because the asking had become too painful. The question of whether something genuinely, completely, life-changingly good was still available to you. It is. And it is closer than the silence of recent days has given you any reason to believe. If something in this landed with the weight of recognition tonight, if these words found the place in you that has been quietly, stubbornly holding space for something extraordinary, stay close, subscribe, and come back. Because what is forming in your story right now is the kind of thing that deserves to be witnessed all the way through. And the next reading may arrive at exactly the moment the shock does.